Welcome, and thank you for attending my presentation called The Contribution of Inland Fisheries to the Diets of Children in Sub-Saharan Africa, a Food Systems Approach. Inland fisheries is an important resource for people in low and middle income countries, and over 57 million people engage with inland fisheries for their livelihoods. It's also an important source of food for children and adults in low and middle income countries. However, inland fisheries are often overlooked in policy discussions, dwarfed by marine fisheries. However, the link between inland fisheries and the first 1,000 days is not well known. We do know that in sub-Saharan Africa, in particular in Malawi and Zambia, children have low quality diets and do not meet the minimum dietary diversity. However, children in low and middle income countries who consume more fish are less stunted than children who consume less fish. Thus, fish is likely an important resource to these children. And it's important to document both the role of the diet currently and how fish can be leveraged. So we asked, does living closer to inland fisheries lead to increased fish consumption in children? And is this fish consumption associated with improved dietary diversity? Further, employing a food systems approach, we asked, how do inland fisheries compare with other potential sources of animals, i.e. formal markets and livestock ownership? We use nationally representative DHS data, of which many of you are probably familiar, and we limited the data to rural households with children aged 6 to 24 months, which did leave us still with a large sample size for both Malawi and Zambia. We merged the DHS data sets with geographic data sets, such as the Global Lakes and Wetlands database, which allowed us to measure proximity to inland fisheries, and the Accessibility to Cities database, which allowed us to measure proximity to formal markets. We used GIS methods to measure these distances. We employed 4 regression models to look at associations between these distances and components of the diet. In the first model, we used fish consumption alone as the outcome variable in the previous 24 hours in these children. In the second model, we used terrestrial-based animal source food consumption in the previous 24 hours. The third model, we looked at household wealth based on an asset score. And in the fourth model, we looked at dietary diversity in these children, looking at the 8 food groups, including breast milk. For fish consumption, we found that proximity to fisheries was associated with increased fish consumption in both Malawi and Zambia. And household wealth was also associated with increased fish consumption in Malawi and Zambia. However, proximity to formal markets was negatively associated with fish consumption in both countries, indicating that these children are more likely accessing fish from fisheries than formal markets. Looking at animal source food consumption, we found that livestock ownership was not associated with increased consumption, which is perhaps not surprising given the nature of livestock-derived foods, such as cattle and goat. However, household wealth and proximity to formal markets were both positively associated with ASF consumption in both countries. For dietary diversity, we found that fish consumption and terrestrial ASF consumption were separately and positively associated with dietary diversity in both countries. However, wealth, while positively associated in Malawi, was negatively associated in Zambia, indicating that perhaps these children are more reliant on the natural environment, which is decoupled from household wealth, or improved dietary diversity. In the model looking at household wealth, we found that proximity to inland fisheries was positively associated with wealth in Malawi, while we found no association in Zambia. Agricultural land ownership was negatively associated in both countries, while livestock ownership was positively associated in both countries. However, proximity to formal markets was negatively associated with household wealth in Malawi, and positively associated in Zambia, indicating key differences in the way these rural households access wealth. In conclusion, we were able to delineate the role of inland fisheries as a key source of dietary quality for children under 2 by using DHS data sets combined with other geographical data sets. We were also able to disentangle aquatic food consumption from terrestrial ASF consumption, looking at how aspects of the environment are associated with these foods. And in this rural sample of children, inland fisheries and household wealth were the most important predictors of higher dietary diversity through increased fish consumption and ASF consumption of all types, respectively. If they lived closer to inland fisheries, children were more likely to eat fish and exhibit higher dietary diversity. If they lived in a wealthier household, children were more likely to eat all types of ASF, and in Malawi, exhibit higher dietary diversity. If they lived closer to a formal market, children were more likely to eat terrestrial ASF, but not fish. And in a household that owned livestock, children did not eat more terrestrial ASF. Lastly, inland fisheries may be an important source of wealth for households in Malawi, but not Zambia. And the implications from our findings are that inland fisheries are an important source of fish and dietary quality for young children under 2 in sub-Saharan Africa. And it is important to safeguard these natural resources, in particular inland waters and fisheries, to ensure and potentially to leverage an ongoing source of nutrient-rich fish for these young children. For example, fisheries governance needs to effectively balance and maximize conservation goals with livelihood and food security needs. And in order for livestock to enhance the dietary quality of children under 2, interventions need to consider behavior change communication. And with that, I would like to thank the Illuminating Hidden Harvest team, which funded this research, and which is a collaborative study funded by the FAO, Duke University, and World Fish to assess the contribution, impacts, and drivers of small-scale fishers globally. Look forward to early 2021 when the Illuminating Hidden Harvest report will be released. And I would also like to thank the many co-authors who assisted in this work. And with that, I would like to invite any comments and discussion that my co-author Lydia O'Mara and I would like to address. Thank you.